Today, we're going to discuss about Spring configuration properties and how to bind our application properties to our configuration class, and what are the ways to directly bind specific properties to our class or Java field. You can actually do it from the class level or even at the method argument level. So let's start. So first, we need to generate the project using Spring Initializer. Just go to start.spring.io. And then we're gonna build the project using Gradle. Use Java, just use the default version to the 2.6 and then update the project metadata. So in my case, it's Pinoy Java Tech and then the demo artifact creation. Okay, just leave it like we don't need for this tutorial. We don't need to add any further dependencies. By default, Spring or the Spring Initializer will use the Spring Boot Starter as the default library when you generate the project. So let's generate the project. Click this button and then let's unzip the folder. Let's unzip the zip file to our Eclipse workspace. Okay, so after we were able to extract the project from the zip file, let's import the project to our Eclipse IDE. So let's just click import and then find Gradle, existing Gradle project, click next, and then put it to the right folder, finish. So now let's go to our resource package and see that we have the application.properties file. By default, we don't have any properties. So let's add some of them. For example, maybe we want to add properties like for database. So let's say db.username equal to user1, db.password equal to pass. So how are we going to bind these properties to our configuration class? Simple. So let's create a new class under our configuration props package. So click other, create a class, and then let's name it tdconfig. Click finish, and then we need to add or annotate the class with at configuration properties. And then let's add prefix. So what is the prefix? In our application properties, it's db. So when working with configuration properties, usually we also need to set the value for the prefix because our application properties might also contain other properties for another database or another context. So it's always important that our properties will be prefixed. So in this case, we have the db. Let's put it in here. And then you now have your first configuration db class. The next thing you want to do is to add your fields. So start string, username, private string, password. And then what's next? We need to add our getters and setters. So generate getters and setters. Click on that and generate. After this, we need to go to our main class because we need to implement our command line runner so we could test and print our properties in the console. So let's type bin and then public command line runner and then run it. So this argument should be able to resolve the type of dbconfig and config. Then let's implement our anonymous class for the command line runner args just like that. And then let's print the value of our username and password. So user and then config that what is a okay username. And then next pass. So config that get password. Okay, so let's put it into the new line so it's easy to read. Okay, so now that we have it, can we already run it? No, we need to tell Spring that we want to bind our properties to a specific configuration class, which is the dbconfig. So how do we tell Spring that? We need to annotate the main class with @enable configuration properties, and then let's pass the db class name, which is the dbconfig that class. Okay, so now we can run the boot run Gradle task. So before that, let's try to first make sure that it is actually building before we can run. Okay, so let's wait until the Gradle build is done. Okay, so the build is success. So now let's try to execute boot run. So just click on this Gradle task and let's wait until Spring finishes its job. Okay, so after executing the boot run, we were able to print the username and the password correctly. So as you can see, so far what we did is just print the username and the password in here. Then where are the value coming from? It's coming from our application.properties, user1 and pass. So what actually happens in here is that the Spring Boot starter during the startup scans our class path and then check if our classes is annotated with @configurationProperties. During the startup, if the scan successfully executed, it will bind our properties in this file to this class. And then the value for our username and password will be populated correctly. And that's what we are seeing here in our console. So what are the other ways to bind our properties? So to start with, these are the variable-based binding. There are also other ways like private collection binding. So let's try to add a list to bind the collection to our dbconfig pass. So start string others. And then what's next? Let's add a getters and setter for that field. Correct. So generate getter and setter and then save. Okay, and then let's run. So let's wait until it's finished. Okay, it seems that we were not able to add the collection and print it to our console. So let's go back to our main class. So here, just print it like this. Config that others, that stream, that for each, and then just pass, a function that out that out into one. Okay, that's good. So now let's see if it's going to print any values from our collection list. Okay, so it seems that we're having a problem in here. The program is throwing a null pointer exception. The reason being is that we don't have any values for our new field, others. See, in here, we added a new field, others, but we actually don't have any properties bound to it from our application.properties. The easy way to fix this is to at least add a default value for our collection. So how to do that? Let's use the @value. The value should under, where is it under? Spring Framework annotations. So let's use that and then pass our default value. So to do that, let's say test1 and then test2. It means that to create or make a list bound to this property others, you need to just use the comma to separate them. Now let's try to execute the program. Okay, so this time we were able to print the content of our collection. So the value for our collection is the default value that we put in our value annotation, which is the test1 and test2. So this is what we call collection-based binding. Now, how about if we add values from our application.properties? Is it going to pick up the properties here or the default value from here? So let's try. So db.others. So how to do that? So let's say db.others is equal to db1, db2. Okay, so let's try to run our program and see if it's printing the values from our application.properties. Okay, so it was able to successfully use the values from our application.properties. It means whatever values we put here, it will only be used if ever the others doesn't have any values bound to it from the application.properties file. Otherwise, it will use the properties bound to it, just like this. Aside from the collection binding strategy, we can actually just use another type, which is the map. So how to do that? So let's say string that, and then let's name it map. Then what's next? Let's generate our getters and setters. Just click on that and then generate. After that, let's go back to our main class and then print the values from our map. So how to do that? Config that for each key and value, key and v. Okay, and then let's type system out at println. Okay, so now we should be able to see the value from our map. So let's run our program. Okay, so another null pointer exception. What could be the reason the application is throwing this exception? That's right. It's because the map doesn't have a default value. So let's go back to our dbconfig class and add the default value to it. But since you already know how to do that, let's just add value to our application.properties directly. So how do we do that in terms of map? Since we already know how to do it in list, in map, we just do it this way. So you have to use dot and then the key. So what is the key? Let's say user equal to user1, or let's just say username, and then db.map. Aside from that, you can actually just use open close bracket. So password equal to password. Okay, so now let's try to execute the program and see if it's printing username and password from our map. Okay, so let's go here. Alright, so it was able to successfully print the value of our user and the password. So that is very simple. Now we were able to print the value from our fields username and pass using field binding. Okay, so after that we were able to print and bind properties from our application.properties to our list that is called collection binding. And next, we were able to write properties that can be bind to our map. And now that is what we call map binding. So what are the other ways to bind our properties to our application. So let's try this new thing, which is field binding. Yes, we can actually use field binding in our method parameter. So how to do that? So let's say we want to just directly bind our specific property to our field. Say like what property we want to bind. DB username. So let's go here, and what are the annotation we need to do that? At value. Okay, so at value, and then here we need to use EL expression. So the basic usage of EL expression so we can bind a property is just simple as this. So you need to use $, open close, and then the field name of type of string. So username. So now we have the username. Let's try to print it in here. System.out.println. Okay, user name from at value. Then let's print it username. Then let's run the program if it's going to work. Okay, both run. Okay, so it seems that field variable binding works in method argument. So is there anything that we could also do aside from method argument? Yes, you can actually just go directly to your dbconfig class and create another field and annotate it with add value. So let's do that here. Add value. Let's say we want to bind this field db.password. To what field? Private string secret. So now this is one of the use case that we should be able to use at value annotation. Cases like the application properties name or keys is not the same, or we want to bind our application properties to a different field name. For example, in our application.properties, it's actually db.password, but we want to bind it to other field name, say like secret. In that case, you can use a value. So the next thing is that we want to add getters and setters, right, for this field. Let's do that in here. Generate. Okay. And then let's go back here and print the value from that field. Secret from at value. Then it's actually from config. Okay, that secret. Okay. Let's run our program to see if it's secret. Printing in our console. So now our secret field is populated with the password value, and it's able to print, the program is able to print the value of secret to our console, which is pass. Correct? So see, the pass is the same value of the secret field. Okay, so that is the most common scenario that we are using at configuration properties in our application, and how or what are the ways that we should be able to bind our properties to our Spring application. So far, what we've discussed is that we were able to generate a project using the Spring initializer and then import it to our Eclipse IDE. And then after that, we write properties to our application properties, just like this. And then we bind it to our dbconfig class. So we were able to discuss ways to actually bind properties to our dbconfig or configuration class. So first, that was variable-based binding, the collection-based binding, the map binding, and we can actually have different flavor on how to use the field variable binding, just like this. We were able to use the at value annotation, and we were able to use the @value annotation in method argument. So the use cases of the @value annotation is that we might want to bind properties to another field name. Say like in the property file, it is actually db.password. But we don't want to bind that to password field, and we want to bind it to the secret field. That's all for today. Please subscribe and leave some comments for any other topics you might want me to discuss. Thank you so much.